Okay, welcome everybody to the improvisation lesson for 9-Pound Hammer. There is an updated PDF. I went through several updates this morning, but there's an updated PDF that now includes the improvisation material. I will be putting it on screen as well, but if you want to take a look at that while we're going along, you can. Just making sure everything is running. It looks like it is. And I got to make sure I can see everybody's comments and everything else while we're going. So give me a second to just kind of get that squared away. Because nothing's worse than not knowing what's going on while I'm streaming. I want to make sure I can read these as they come in. Okay. There were not a ton of comments in the forum where I did kind of post at the last minute about it. So that may be part of the reason. But I will go through the material that I prepared for today's lesson, and then I'll take questions as they go. It was hard to find the YouTube link. Was it not just posted in the Was it not just posted in the forum? Let me take a look and see what's going on with that. I didn't actually get it into the monthly page yet, but usually I think people just find it from the forum, but you know, I would not actually know how people usually find it because I already know where it is. Let me see. I'm just going to take a look and make sure that the link is visible in the forum. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I want to know what's going on. Let's see what happens when I click this.
Monthly page.
Oh, did I? Maybe I didn't. All right. Well, there is a YouTube link, and I thought that this would take you to YouTube. Yeah, it does. If you click on YouTube, it takes you to in the window. I'll show you what I'm talking about. I'll share my screen. It'll be a little weird, but basically, just for future reference, if you're in the forum, right, and I'll just refresh this page, then what's going on is here's the post, which I did not. Usually I try to pin this to the top too, and I didn't. But here's the link, and usually if you just click on this where it says watch on YouTube, it should take you to YouTube itself, and then you can see this the stream over here and so anyway, maybe that's something everybody already knew, but I'll go back to the comments now. Yeah, it's on the forum page. Okay, it looks like people are finding it. But if there's a way to make it easier to find, I'm all for that, and I'm all about user feedback. I'm not often on the user end, so I don't always know what it looks like for everybody trying to find stuff. So I appreciate that kind of information. All right, let's get rolling. Let me pull up the material that we're going to be looking at. If I didn't lose it in that. Yeah, I did. I got to go pull it up again. So smooth. Let me grab the handout stuff so that we can look at it together and make it gigantic and all that. Oh, and I got to keep comments up. That's what I was trying to do, was keep an eye on what everybody else has to say. So give me a second here. Okay. I do this every month. Eventually I'll get totally smooth at it. Okay, here we go. Here's the stuff. Okay. That's actually, we want to be on this page. Yeah, here we go. Okay. So let's start talking about 9-pound hammer. I've just lost all the questions and answers. Let me just see. Just want to be able to look at the chat. Okay. So here's 9-pound hammer, the form. Now, so the first thing I want to point out is, well, there's two things I want to point out. Big picture, we're going to look at the form of the chord progression, and we're going to look at the way that the melody lies over the chords, and also how the original version of the tune has this kind of bigger shape to it, which we can use as improvisers. Also the fact that most people don't play the chord progression the way that the Merle Travis version has it. And my arrangement of this tune came primarily from the Merle Travis version, as much of his melody as I could make work and as much of his chord progression, which was all of it. But basically, the embellished version, the fundamental version, is just this first pass through, or maybe I gave you both of them in each version. I think I did. Yeah, there's the A and the B section, but let me slow down and start from the beginning. This is the chord progression, right? So it's D in 2 bars, then G for 2 bars, then D for a bar, and then a split bar of D, A, and then back to D. And then the next part of the tune is the exact same chord progression. 2 bars of D, 2 bars of G, a bar of D, a split bar of D into A, and then a bar of D. Now, here's the thing. Most people after Merle Travis go for a bar of D and then a bar of A. So especially like, someone posted the Tony Rice version, which is a favorite of mine. And then, a lot of other versions. And almost always you just hear like, so here's 2 bars of D and then 2 bars of G and then a bar of D and then a bar of A. And then back to D. And Merle Travis plays bars 5 and 6 like this. So we're going to stick with that because it presents some interesting things to do and because it's the Merle Travis version. But here's the thing. If you think about what the melody is doing, you hear the melody that starts down here. Well, the 9-pound hammer, it's a little too heavy, right? You hear that twice. Another verse that starts basically the same way. I can't remember the words, but it does the same melody. Right, so that would be these 2 passes through. These are repeat signs. It means you play the whole thing inside the bracket twice. But then you get to the part that starts with the words "Roll on, Buddy," right? The sort of. This is the second time through he sings "Roll on, Buddy, pull a load of coal." So when you look at it that way, one time through the melody starting down low is an A section, 8 bars. And then you repeat that. And then you play the part that starts here, the higher melody, which functions like a chorus when you're singing. And when you're just thinking about the music, that functions like a B section, and then you have 2 of those. So really, we could say that the whole form, even though it's just an 8-bar blues, we could say the whole form is AABB, which is cool and useful and interesting because, I'm just fixing my screen here so I can see everything that's going on. Because now, usually, we think of 12-bar blues, it's got this AAB form, 4 bars, 4 bars, and 4 bars. Or you think about a standard, it's usually either ABAC or AABA. But here we have AABB, which we can use when we get into the improvising. So here's the 8-bar chord progression. And now what's going on with the phrasing of the tune is that there are 4 phrases, 4, little bits of melody, 4 actual verbal phrases, right? Well, the 9-pound hammer, right? That's the first phrase. And then it's answered with, it's a little too heavy. And then the third line is, for my size. And then, maybe for my size. So you have each one of those phrases starts before a main section of the tune. So if you think about, we got these 8 bars, right? Think of it's 2 bars of D, and then 2 bars of G, and then bar of D, split bar of D and A, and then 2 bars of D. So we got these, we can think of it as having these 4 little sections to the 8 bars of the tune. And each one of them we lead in with a melody. So really starting in effectively in bar 8, right? Or the bar before you come around to the beginning. And then bar 1, we have a bit of melody. And then really the next phrase starts somewhere around this chord here, leading you into here. So that when you land on the G, you've arrived. Same thing, coming out of the G, you got to play landing into the D. And then you're going to play from the D through the A and then land on the D again. So we have 4 phrases. So we can look at the phrasing, we can look at what the melody's doing as a clue to kind of how the 8 bars gets kind of divided up, or how you can think about it, and then start to use that as a model for improvising. So in terms of the rhythmic contour, right, the shape of the melody, the contour of what the singing is doing, or the melody of the song is doing, excuse me, we have a phrase rhythmically, it's, now that's the same rhythm as, and then we pause for this shorter phrase, right, with only 3 notes, and then, so it's really, if you think of the rhythm of the melody, it's A-A-B-A within these 8 bars. Like you have a phrase that leads in, you have a similar rhythm here, you have a new rhythm here, and then you have the original rhythm here. So we have an 8-bar form that's A-A-B-A inside of this bigger A-A-B-B structure that we talked about over here. Here's the big structure of the 8-bar sections. 8 bars, 8 bars, 8 bars, 8 bars. But when you get inside them, it's a little AABA in terms of what the melody's doing inside each of those sections. So inside the first A, it's AABA. Inside the second A, it's AABA. Inside the B, it's AABA. And inside the second B, it's AABA. So we've broken it down now where one phrase sitting right here is going to be part of this whole equation. But if I just said to you, why don't you play 32 bars of solo, that's a lot of real estate to fill up. But now if you're thinking, I need to play like a phrase and then play kind of a similar phrase and then maybe play something a little bit different and then come back to the first phrase, well, now you got a little structure. You're doing what the melody does, but you can play some variations on the melody. So that's what we're going to look at now, starting with just the rhythmic contour itself. So what I think is really helpful is to start with just the alternating bass, right, on the 6th string and the 4th string. That's what we got here in the bass. But then I've just isolated the rhythm. I'm holding down a D on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. And I'm just playing the rhythm of the first melody. So instead of playing, I'm just going to isolate the rhythm and just play. And then I'm going to put that over the alternating thumb. So I've got the rhythmic contour, the shape of the melody, but I'm not worrying about playing the actual melody. I'm just looking at how it fits over the thumb. And this way I can really focus on the syncopation if I want to, right? And you can look at the tab and see like, here's a bass note, then a note on the and of 1, another bass note, a note on the and of 2, and then it's pinches the rest of the way out. Pinch on 3, pinch on 4, pinch on 1, pinch on 2. So, I didn't even syncopate it when I was playing it before. Right, so before you even get into improvising, you can just use this as an exercise in rhythmic coordination. So 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2. Right, now that's going to be the rhythmic pattern for the second phrase also. Just it's going to be over the G chord. And then here's the rhythm that happens over the 3rd phrase, the phrase that is taking you from G back to D. That's the for my size phrase, right? So 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can see there's only one syncopation here, right? So 1, pinch on 2, 3, and 4, 1. So that's a different kind of rhythm. So you might want to go back and forth between the A rhythm and the B rhythm, really get them in your hands and in your head. Right, there's the A, and then you can even hear it makes a really nice calm response, because we always think, the response, maybe that's busier, but actually like sometimes the response is a reduction of what you played before. And then going back and forth between A and B. And finally, I just included this. The last A is a variation on the first A, because you notice there's only a note on the downbeat here, nothing over here. So we just have nothing else after the downbeat of 1. So that's the buddy for my size phrase, right? It just ends on size. Right? So those are the phrases, basically. Those are the rhythms we're going to be working with. So now, here's what we can do to start working on improvising. Let's take a phrase, and I'm really going to stick to a pretty simple vocabulary. I didn't write this out, but it's basically just taking, I'm just going to be working with notes around the D chord that gives me basically D major pentatonic. Here's the 5th and the 6th and the root. And then here's the flat 3rd from the blues scale or the minor pentatonic scale. And then here's the major 3rd, which is back to the D major pentatonic scale. So in terms of D and D major pentatonic, it's the 5th, the 6th, the root, flat 3rd, major 3rd. And we might jump up and use the 5th up here at some point, right? But so the trick with improvising on this tune, to me, is the melody is really doing very similar things from phrase to phrase. But the trick is that similar melodic ideas are landing in a way that's appropriate to the specific chord you're going to. So the melody is targeting the chord you're going to. Landing on a big fat D chord, a D note here to go with the D chord. Right? And then, right, so there's using landing on the 5th and the 3rd of the G chord. And then landing on the 5th of D, and then landing back on the D. So we want to come up with other licks. For every lick we come up with, we want to be able to run it through that process like the melody does. So let's take a first lick. So this first lick here, rhythm A. Now we're heading into measure 1. So that means this is actually measure 1. It's a little confusing. This is basically a pickup phrase. This would be happening over measure. It would be happening either at the beginning with no bass, but if you were already like into the tune and you were coming out of the melody, this would be measure 8. Measure 8 and measure 1. And I gave it to you with the bass so that you could practice playing these phrases the way you really would on the tune. So if you're coming out of the melody, so here's your last big section. And now you're here, you're on measure 7 and measure 8. Right, playing this and this. So the phrase is just, it fits the rhythmic contour, and it leads into that first measure of the next section. I'm going to pause here just because there's a question, which is a good one from Stephen. Do I alternate fingerings on the same string? For the most part, I do not. If I'm just going to play this rhythmic contour exercise, I'm just going to play with the middle finger on the second string and call it a day. That's just going to be, it's not going by fast enough that I need to really like alternate, and I'm just going to do it that way because it's kind of boneheaded, but it works for me. So good question. So now here's how we would take that same lick and land it on G, right? So we still have, only now the bass is going to shift here to playing the 3rd and the 5th of the G chord. So I want to be able to go from this phrase to this phrase to play the same melody on top, but have it shift underneath in terms of the harmony. So and then I'm like, well, here comes where the next phrase would happen. So I'm thinking like, well, I want to use the rhythmic contour of the little B, right? The third phrase. So I shorten the phrase from to just and then I'm going to play my first phrase, but keep it shorter at the very end. And of course, I've got to fold in that A chord. So the idea is to take the rhythmic contour of the melody, take a new lick, and then be able to basically turn that lick into something like a melody by running it through the same chord progression that the melody goes through, so that as you're soloing, if you get an idea, right? Now that's just one possibility, and it sounds more like a melody than like an improvisation, right? But if you learn more than one of these and you start to mix and match them, then it starts to become more flexible. So let's look at some other possibilities. Here's another lick. Right, that's a little funkier. Goes from the 5th of D to the flat 3rd, over to the 6th, and then back to the root. Same rhythmic contour. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Right, so that's just playing that lick over and over. And the thing about playing with rhythmic contours, once you get one of them and you start to get it in your hands, you know, rhythmically you're doing the same kinds of pinches and things every time. So you can start adding in different notes and it's going to get more and more natural feeling with every new lick because you're used to playing that rhythm. So what happens if we try to put that phrase on, make that phrase land on G? Not much different, right? I'm just changing up what the thumb is doing. And then here is my simplified version for the 3rd phrase. Right, so I'm coming out of the G chord, going to the flat 7, going to the 3rd, and then coming back to the root. So not only are you trying to get each phrase to work over each chord, but you know you're also practicing doing something new while getting in and out of different moments in the chord progression. So you're getting used to making those transitions and towards targeting those root notes that you want to get to that tell you you've arrived at a new chord, or whatever chord tone it is, root, 5th, 3rd. And then finally we come back at the end. So we're going from D to A. Slowed down, it's going to sound pretty weird. But up to tempo, it just sounds like melody over chords. If you play it right. And the fingering there's a little weird. But I'm just moving my middle finger back and forth. So now, you know, like I said, this is leading into, it's a little misleading to look at this because it's not measures 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's measures 8 from whatever the last time around was, leading into measure 1, measure 2, leading into measure 3, measure 4, leading into measure 5, measure 6, leading into measure 7. That's the clearest way I could work out to illustrate it on paper. So let's try another one. Here's using the major 3rd, which over the bass sounds like this. And again, you sort of line it up and look at the syncopations and then the pinches. And we have 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1, 2. Now here, when we go to the G, the big thing here is that we're really nailing the major 3rd. Really a very sort of sweet sounding major third. It's really spelling out the D. That's going to sound completely weird over the G chord. It's all wrong. It's a major 7th of G. So we want to drop it down to flat 7. And that's what we have here. So going between these two measures, these two sections, we have if you play it right. That's a really important sound in roots music. You know, it's Panhandle Rag, or I can't remember which one. It's one of those Leon McAuliffe, Bob Wills things. So it's that sound of going from the major third on the 1 chord to the flat 7 of the 4 chord. So and then here's our shortened version for the B phrase. Right, so going from the 2nd to the root to the 3rd of D. And then finally for the last A. So we don't have time to go up to the major 3rd. So we go from the D to the A, like that. So if we put all those together into a chorus, we'd have one more. So now if we want to start up here, maybe for, you know, for a variation on more of like the chorus, what I'm calling the chorus of the tune. So we'd have, this one also lands on major 3rd, doing a very deliberate flat 3 to 3 thing. So here's root, 5th, root, 4, 5, flat 3, 3. So we have over the bass. And you can get away with playing up here in open position because we're just playing the bass on the 6th string and the 4th string. So everything's cool there. And then to get to the G chord, same thing. Now we're going to take, instead of going flat 3 to 3, we're going to go 2 to flat 3 of the D chord, which is taking us into the flat 7 of the G chord. So and this is a little tricky, but so we're going to, because for here we want, if we want to play like the B, the abbreviated version of this. In these two measures here, we're gonna have to jump up and get the G in the bass. So if we're coming from here, we're gonna have to go do one measure where we've got the bass down here on the 3rd and the 5th, and then jump to the bass on the root and the 5th. So the transition from here to here is something you might want to practice. So you've got right, just those 2 bars. if I played it correctly. Right, so that moment. And then finally we can finish up. Again, it's a little tricky getting from D to A and back to D. And I'm fingering that like this with the pinky and the index and the left hand. And then so there, that's easy. That's open, right? This is all with open bass here. Down to get the A, but then I need to get a bass note in here with the middle finger and then slide in behind it with the flat 3 to 3 of the D, which is a little weird. And when I arranged the melody, I left a lot of those flat thirds as simply flat thirds, and you could do that too. Because the way Merle Travis sings, it's like he sings a lot of flat thirds that he's sort of bending up to the major third, but it's pretty ambiguous. So that'd be fine too. If that slide is really blowing your mind, kind of crushing your index finger in behind the middle finger, just play flat 3. It sounds really dissonant in the moment, but in context, it sounds great. So that whole page, this whole page, if you put it together, remembering this is bar 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, over here somewhere. Then you'd have So now we've got 4 different phrases, and with each phrase we've talked about how to follow that phrase through the whole chorus. Now you don't have to do it that way. Once you have this vocabulary, if you just think about the shape of the phrases, you know, you can mix them up, you can put them in different places, but you've got 4 different ways to start to slice and dice. So you could actually go through, what have we got? We've got 4 different licks and we've got 4 different phrases. So you could just, go through and do all the combinations, right? Start with the first phrase and then go to the next phrase and then go back. You could start to just try to figure out every possible combination of phrases. And that would be a way to start doing things. Now, there are 2 other things you can do with the phrasing. Let me pause for this question from Michael. Flat third could also be bent a smidge. Yeah, it could. It's pretty hard to bend high string on the 1st fret anywhere. But if you had it here, right, so I guess you could do that, right? So that you're bending the F here. You do have to worry about the A and the bass, and so I'm grabbing like the flat 7 up here in the bass on the 4th string. I don't know, getting the A in the bass here. It starts to present some difficulties to try to find a way to get that bass to work, but it could be done. Here is a bit about, speaking of getting up the neck, here is an example of how to take a phrase up the neck, again, sort of for that second half of the tune, so that you could improvise down here for the first 16 bars, 8 and 8, and then start to take it up the neck again, so that your solo reflects the form of the tune, and also so that you have some sense of build. Like it always sounds like you're building if you go up higher on the neck, or most of the time, right? So if you play a couple choruses down here, do that a couple times through, and then you move up, it's going to feel like it's got more impact. So here's an example of a phrase that starts off higher. So we've got, actually it's a little more syncopated too, isn't it? So there's the phrase. I'm up here on the flat third, on the fifth to the flat third. Now here, because we got the open D strings, now we can bend the flat third up. It's easier because we're not trying to hold down anything in the bass. Although I'd probably save the bend for the second time we play the F, because there's more time to actually do so. And so we've got the fifth and the flat third bending up. There's the six, there's flat three bending, and then there's the root. So same sound as down here, only upside down and backwards. Here we had flat three and six. Here we have six and flat three. So the phrase there it is with the syncopation. 1 and 2 and 1. 1 and 2 and 3 and boy. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? So this is the only unsyncopated note in the measure, in the melody, right? And then we're on the beat here, on beat 2. So how can we take that through everything? So we've got, and then, well, we have to use a bar chord for the G. I'm not a big fan of bar chords on the acoustic, but this is one of my, if I'm going to play a bar chord, this is one of my favorites. Right? It basically gives you this voicing, root, 5, flat 7, maybe 9, but up here, so here's root and root both being played with the bar on the 6th and the 4th string. Then here's the 5th of the chord and the flat 7 and potentially the 9 or the 3. Like there's your full G7 chord. But so we play this lick and we land here, we can get the bass, we can get the landing note here, we can get this note right here, this D. So and then we can play this shorter B lick. And then finally, so now we've got the 6. So we've got the flat 3, we've got the 6 down here, and then the root. And here we are going to use this shape to get flat 7 in the bass of D. So from here, we've got, and if you use ring and middle, that leaves index and ring free here. So it's not super intuitive to use the middle finger here. You kind of want to use the index, but then you got to jump with the index. So if you do pinky, middle, it's a bit of a stretch, but then you're in shape to do this. So boy, the hands are not cooperating. All right, so right, so now we're up the neck. So we could play down the neck. And you get that sense of like, oh, you're elevating things the second time around. You're bringing it up in register. One more. So here is one more thing. So we've talked about really all these phrases have just been landing right on the downbeat. But of course, that's not how people always really play. That's how the melody goes in this case. But it's really natural to want to delay the resolution, which is something that I've talked about in terms of playing blues. But here, to delay the resolution just means that when you get to the downbeat of the place you've landed, you don't necessarily stop. The resolution is landing on the root in this case. And it feels like you've landed. But if you kept playing into the measure and didn't get to the root till later in the measure, there's a better example, right? Right now I haven't gotten there till what? The end of 2, right? And so I've delayed the resolution from the downbeat to the end of 2. So that's a pretty short delay, but it is a delay. So here's an example of some licks that have more. Here's a longer delay, right? It doesn't really land till 3. So here we've got, oh yeah. Well, it's sort of related to the vamp lick, but that's really where you land. And it's not even really a strong chord tone, it's the 6th, but it is a sense of resolution. So now we do land right on the downbeat for the G. That's this lick right here, which looks like this. Going into that bar chord again, and then there's your bend again. So coming out of G, again, the delayed resolution, we don't get to the resolution until the end of 2. 1 and 2 and 1. Oh no, that till 3, I guess. 1 and 2 and 3. And then, and so here we've got a different kind of phrase. So the delayed resolutions are here on beat measure 1 and here on measure 5, right? So, oh, sorry. And you could apply that delayed resolution to any of the other phrases that we were working on, but that's one specific way to do it. So let me see how we're doing here. It is 3:20. My God, I've been talking a long time. Let me stop there. Those are the exercises. That's the layout and the basic material. But let me stop here and just spend some time taking questions about any of that. If you got them, I am happy to address them. I'll just pause here because I always forget it takes a while for the webcast to catch up with me. There's like a 10-second delay. And also if you're watching, on replay, which most of you will be, it looks like, then you're just watching me kill time, which is not very entertaining. That's really the way to think. That's the layout for as far as thinking about improvising on this in terms of the rhythmic contour, and it is a pretty bluesy tune. So it's really just that combination of major pentatonic with a couple of blues notes. That's really the vocabulary of the melody. So that's kind of what I stuck to in terms of the improvising material, because with the bass moving as much as it does, you've really got your hands full just putting some basic pentatonic phrases over that shifting alternating thumb. So I think that's plenty to work on. So again, if you have questions about this, we can get into any details, like this one from Stephen. Any hints on muting the fourth string? I was noticing as I was going over these exercises that it's ringing out pretty much. Like I'm not really, I can hear that it's coming through. Like I'm muting the sixth string, but like the fourth string's wide open. So I don't think you have to mute it. I mean, you could just, slide the whole operation down a little bit, right, towards the higher strings. But that, to me, starts to get into a pretty unnatural feeling hand position. So unless, I guess my response is you don't need to mute the fourth string. If I've sort of implied that you need to, don't sweat it. If you want to mute the fourth string, then you're going to have to, now that I'm thinking about it, no, I wouldn't go this way. Scratch that. I would go more this way. I'd go towards the fingerboard so that my palm was just not riding just this corner right here where the low string hits the saddle, but move it up so that it's actually over this whole area. So by moving from here I am right on the edge of the bridge, right? But if I move the whole thing up, then it gets tighter. You start to, the further up you get, the more the sixth string is going to disappear completely. But that's a little drier, right? That's not wide open. And there's still some sixth string in there. So that seems okay. And I have moved down a tiny bit so that when I pick the fourth string, the sixth string, the act of moving the thumb pulls some of what's muting the string away from that string. So now the sixth string is a little more open and the fourth string is a little more damped. It's a great question. I never really thought about it in that much detail, but that's about what it sounds like. Good question. Good technique idea. There really weren't that many questions on the forum. One of them was about this shout chorus thing that I'm doing in the improvisation, and I'm going to talk about shout chorus and voicings and things like that you can do in next week's stream, which will be the arranging stream. That'll be the last stream for the month. So that's pretty much what I came to talk about. And like I said, the most updated version of the PDF is version 1.4, and there were actually a couple of 1.4s. So just make sure you go back. If you downloaded anything before the stream actually took place, just go back and make sure you've got something from this moment or later. So if you're downloading the PDF anytime after the stream actually aired, you've got the latest version. You've got the 1.4 version that's got all the, as many of the music typos corrected and, just everything labeled like I'm talking about it here in the lesson. So I'll play through a little bit more, just improvising with some of these phrasing ideas. If you've got any more questions, post them. Otherwise, we'll wrap this up and get ready for doing arranging next week. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoy working on that. If you've got questions, post them in the forum underneath the video. I'll try to find a place to park this. Well, I know where it needs to be parked in the monthly information. And yeah, hope you enjoyed this. And we'll get into all the arranging stuff next week. So feel free to start posting questions about that as you come up with them. All right. See you then.